Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is Dr. Ruta Kulkarni, President Asami India. I welcome you all for this grand round of Asami India. And today's grand round is organized by our Northeast region of Asami India. The state representative for Northeast region is Dr. Jishnu Barua. I welcome you, sir. I also welcome all the esteemed faculty today. I welcome all the members on the panel, and I welcome all of you who have logged in. So in today's grand round, we will be having case-based discussion. So we will be discussing very important topics like infected non-unions, post-septic deformities, lengthening, etc. So without wasting time, let's go and start our grand round. I hand over the meeting to Dr. Jishnu Barua. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. I will just share and speak a few words on the faculty today.
Yes, please.
And let me thank you, President Asami India, Dr. Ruta Kulkarni, and Secretary Dr. Ravi Chauhan, all the esteemed panelists, and warm welcome to all the delegates who have logged in. Let me just introduce you to the 5 speakers. I'll come later that will be speaking today, presenting their cases. Start with Professor Ranjit Kumar Barua, sir. He is the retired head of Department of Assam Medical College Hospital, Department of Orthopedics. And he also served and retired as a professor and head in the Tomoriba Institute of Health and Medical Sciences of Naharlagun in Arunachal Pradesh. And he was the person who was instrumental to introduce Elizarov in this region. That was way back in 1994. He has 33 publications, more than 70 presentations in the various forums. He was faculty in a number of workshops and conferences, regional, national, and international. Besides that, he is a poet, philanthropist, photography enthusiast, sportsman, sports organizer, but above all, a very good teacher and the torchbearer of Elizarov in this region. Next, we have Dr. Chetan Kabra. He is a consultant in the Apollo Hospitals at Guwahati. He did his MBBS at GMCH, this Guwahati Medical College, PG from Ramaya Medical College. Then he went for MCH in Dundee and had an arthroplasty workshop in Germany. He is interested in complex trauma, spine, pelvic surgery, arthroscopy, arthroplasty. He prefers to do a lot of LRS, but he also does a lot of Elizarov in his practice. Next, we have Dr. Lin Ligu. He is assistant professor at the Tomoriba Institute of Health and Medical Sciences at Naharlagun. He did his MBBS at LLRM Medical College, Meerut, then followed by an MS in Banaras University. He also does all the surgeries, a general orthopedic surgeon, special interest in complex trauma, tumor surgeries, spine, pelvic and arthroscopy, and also arthroplasty. Finally, we have Dr. Hemjit Das, assistant professor at Assam Medical College, Dibrugarh, Assam. Did his MBBS and MS at AMCH. Then he did an arthroscopy and arthroplasty fellowship under Dr. Sachin Tapaswi. He also does complex trauma, arthroscopy, arthroplasty, deformity correction, besides his regular Elizarov surgeries. That I would like to hand it back to the moderator, Dr. Ravi Chauhan, and stop this sharing.
Yeah, we can move ahead with the first faculty.
First faculty.
Dr. Jishnu, you want to present first? No?
Yes.
Yeah, please share your slide.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's coming, please.
Coming. All right. Let me minimize this. Welcome to all the delegates from this. Is anything else showing in the slide? I am looking at a lot of buttons above. Are you seeing these too?
Yeah, it's coming nicely. You can go ahead.
Okay. So, greetings everybody from Assam Medical College, Hospital Dibrugarh, Assam, a heritage medical college in this remote part of India. This is naturally a very nice ground where Elizarov practice is done because it's so remote and the healthcare is so widely distributed. So Elizarov is something that naturally comes to our armamentarium. I'd like to present actually a simple case that posed a lot of challenge. And I would like to present this case because it's such a common occurrence in day-to-day life, and I think it will appeal to a lot of the delegates or the viewers. And also during the management of this case, we encountered a lot of problems, which I believe that a discussion from the panelists and advice from the panelists would make us optimize our approach to such cases in the future. So it was a 21-year-old male, suffered a road traffic accident some 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago. He underwent all sorts of surgeries in multiple centers: external fixation, plating, plastic surgeries, debridement, and all the replating, fibular graft, redebridements, and finally bone cement. After 9 surgeries in 3 years, everything was removed, and the limb had healed, and the infection was dormant for the last 3 months. However, he was advised amputation by one of the surgeons because there was no reconstruction that could be done for him. And so he came to us. So this was one of the few pictures that he had with him, probably after his fibula got infected and rest are lost. Then finally, a picture also was available from his mobile on the day after the fibula was removed, the plates were removed. And then subsequently he underwent bone cement, and that also refused to heal. The skin also refused to heal, and it was soon removed. And after 3 months, it became quiescent. Now he had a problem like this one: 6 centimeter shortening and 3 centimeter gap. The ankle was in equinus. It was obviously stiff. The X-ray of the residual bone is very doubtful, sclerotic and tapered ends. And of course, disuse of the metaphysis can be seen. I mean, this can be anticipated. And the status of infection cannot be sure at this moment, but for all practical purpose, since it was 3 months of quiescency, so it was a B3 type of non-union aseptic. So what we planned was to put him on a very minimal amount of hardware to address all the situations, all the conditions one by one. It's a 3-ring construct with 2 levels at the distal small fragment and a foot frame, a standard foot frame to correct the deformity. So this was the picture. After this, we come back to the problems: 6 centimeter shortening, 3 centimeter gap, ankle in equinus stiff, residual bone doubtful, disuse, and infection. So there might have been a lot of ways to address this, like bone transport and simultaneous correction of the ankle deformity, or you can go for an acute shortening and then relengthening. You can deal with the ankle deformity at the same time or earlier than that. So for some reasons, we decided that the first thing that he needs is not another incision on this limb. Let us address the things that can be addressed without another incision, because there was nothing to be gained. If we lose more bone, it might result in fixation issues. Those fragments were already very short, and whatever sclerotic bone was there, we can at least use them to have our foothold for the fixator and a strong frame, because the deformity correction frame needs to be really strong. And so we planned to have closure of the gap and correction of the equinus as a first step. So within a week, we compressed it by 4 millimeter per day, and it was compressing well. And then at the same time, the soft tissues were relaxing because of the compression, and the correction of equinus was possible. So after 1 week post-op, what we achieved, that this person who was not walking on his limb for 3 years was now able to bear weight, although the limb has become now 9 centimeters short. So his ankle equinus was corrected. This was the immediate post-op X-ray, not the immediate post-op X-ray. After 3 or 4 days with the ankle in equinus, and it was gradually corrected. And within a week, I'm sure you can appreciate there is some amount of translation and some amount of angulation as well. But I know you know that we have not opened this part at the moment. The lead is not good. This is not a very proper osteosynthesis fixation. We need to have more lead here. But at the same time, that would compromise on our reconstruction. The corticotomy side, the space, the 2-level fixation that we need either side. So for the moment, we tend to ignore this part and then go ahead with the rest of the things. But things developed at that moment. What was quiescent for 3 months became purulent. I mean, it started to discharge after the compression and with bearing. And when we cultured the pus, It was a multi-drug resistant Cyanobacter species that was only moderately sensitive to meropenem. So we went on for meropenem. And after dressings and everything, it healed up well in a month. Then we went ahead with the corticotomy after 1 month. So this was the corticotomy done. The patient was walking with a 9 centimeter heel raise, quite uncomfortable. We decided to retain the foot frame so that the small fragment would have an additional support and the ankle would not go into equinus again during the distraction phase. So the limb length of discrepancy of 9 centimeters was corrected in 3 months, 90 days. And the foot frame was removed at that time to make it more comfortable for him. These are the X-rays during the procedure, the distraction procedure. What I would like to again highlight to you is you can see that there is a simultaneous correction of the translation. That was initially in the docking site. We had anticipated that the transported fragment would tilt posteriorly and also laterally. So the alignment is getting better actually during the distraction. This was not something that we have never opened up till now. So at the end of 9 months, we had a quite acceptable regenerate. And if it was not for the docking site issues, we cannot appreciate anything, whether it is uniting or not. This reconstruction would have a landing index of actually 1, when we usually are used to 1.4, 1.5 like that. So, but then the docking site made us skip another 2 months. Still then, we were not able to assess this docking. Even it was theoretically under compression for more than 6 months, 7 months now. But as you can see, the compression has been continued. There's nothing wrong with the laxity of the wire. We have compressed this so the wires are getting bent. And even the more amount of compression is actually tilting the transported fragment as well. So we stopped that compression at the moment. So when we loosened up the connecting rods and tried to make him work, it was not very comfortable. We had our doubts, but it was almost 1 year now, almost 9, 11 months now. So after consulting with him, and this osteosynthesis frame was also becoming long and elongated and unstable because it was initially a very balanced frame, but because of the 9 centimeter distraction, look at the rods far apart. So this was not doing any good. So we removed it. It was then found united. We put him on a cast brace. However, within 3 weeks, he felt something giving way inside the cast, and he called me up. Came and we saw that it had refractured. So we decided multiple options in this case. Talked about plate. He would not expect plate again. He will not accept it. He just told me that you put the ring again because he was comfortable with the ring. He was walking with the ring for after such a long period. So this time we did not hesitate to open. We opened to have a look inside. We had our bone created. Then we found the vascularity. Although the X-ray looks so sclerosed and tapered, the vascularity of the tissues as well as the bone, we did not have to resect much bone. It was very nice. And we found a slot in the distal medullary canal, and there was a spike of bone, the posterior cortex of the proximal fragment that could have snugly fit into that. That gave us some sort of internal stability. And we created a very small osteosynthesis and balance frame with the ring actually in the regenerate, first ring actually in the regenerate. With that, he was very happy because he got back to his job. He was sending me pictures and videos of his job, how he is going about his life. But after 6 months, this was about 6 months after the second application, the compression was there. Still, the confidence was not there about the union. So this is what we are actually worried about. In a sclerotic, old, multiply treated bone, how do we look for the X-ray signs? They are very tardy. They do not come well in time. But the patient is very comfortable. That is a good thing. So after 8 months, we removed rods. This is a picture where all the connecting rods are totally removed. And he was walking around with only the ring hanging on the distal fragment. He said that do not remove it. I will take it home. Give me the rods. If I have any problem, I will fit it myself. He's a well-versed with the fixator now. So with his cooperation, we continued this for another couple of months, and then we removed it. Before removal, it was more reassuring clinically as well. The radiology, I still have my doubts, but clinically it was more reassuring, so we removed it. This is the final X-ray that we got, and this is the picture of him, or video of him walking around. and he's totally physically as well as professionally rehabilitated. So with this, I would like to end my presentation and hand it over to the moderator, Ravi Chauhan sir. Should I stop share or should I continue with
Thank you,
for
Dr.
questions?
Thank
Okay.
you. It was a
Okay,
nice
thank you.
presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You can
I will
unshare
stop.
it. You can unshare it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So now the panel is open for any questions. Ruta ma'am.
Yeah, so it's a very, very interesting case and very well done. And I'm really happy that patient demanded Elizarov for the second time. So that shows that you are really a very, very good Elizarov surgeon. I would like to make a few comments. You were talking about compression, but I feel that you should always go for accordion maneuver, cycles of compression and distraction. So instead of just compressing, if you give cycles of compression and distraction, like say 20 days compression, then wait for 20 days and then again go for distraction for 20 days, that's, stimulates osteogenesis. So in first place, actually, that would have worked. The second comment that I would like to make is decision of opening the fracture site was good actually for the second time. So you decided for not going for opening the fracture site for some reasons, but if you had done it in first place, I think it would have been helpful, because the
Etc.
bone,
period would have been short.
because the medullary cavity looked closed and sclerosed. So if you had freshened it in first place, it would have
Yes.
saved the second.
Surgery.
But the case is really interesting, very good, very well done.
Thank you.
Dr. Vishnu, it was a good case. Was there any reason that you have not bone grafted it?
Yes. You saw in retrospective, it was a good decision. I mean, when we
In retrospective way,
first thing, there were a lot of problems, and I wanted to approach each of them individually, not put all the eggs in the same basket. Because if I opened it, then I will have the compulsion to resect ends because it was sclerotic. And without opening it, I was thinking that let me take care of the other issues first, the equinus and all things. If I resect more of the distal fragment or more of the proximal fragment, I would have a lot of fixation issues in that case. So if I'm not opening it, so that was the reason why I do not bone graft it. And anyway, in our practice or in my practice especially, the resorting to bone graft is very less in this. We already have good result without bone grafting in Elizarov, provided we have internal stability. Even if whether it's a compound fracture or a non-union that we have done, internal stability seems to be the key to support the fixator, and it does not require bone graft. I don't know about
I
your
agree with you actually. I totally agree with you, Ravi. It would have been disastrous doing bone grafting, especially in infection, because even after Elizarov, there was a sinus. So
definitely. I'm also in favor
bone
of that.
grafting being done, and then the infection just doesn't settle.
Just to convey the message, I have asked Dr. Vishnu why he has not grafted it.
And what he was talking was absolutely correct. Stability, internal stability, as well as the external stability or stability of the fixator. Both are very important here. Are there any questions from the audience?
Dr. Manish, please.
Sir, a few comments. Firstly, good evening, sir. Dr. Jishnu, sir, as Dr. Kulkarni ma'am just said, it is a wonderfully executed case. It's a very difficult case. We keep seeing once in a while such cases. One or two things, I may not be in sequence, but one wonderful thing which is a learning over here in this case is that when the second time you opened and you yourself said that the vascularity was very good, it was all red and periosteum and whatever, sir. Possibly it is the result of that distraction which has happened over a period of time. And as we know that is the methodology of basically the Elizarov thing. So that is one. And sir, another thing is, like, you kept on compressing it at the first time. I was just thinking what I would have done. Possibly I would have gone in the same manner, but at that time I would have tried to achieve some kind of a regular margins at the fracture at the non-union sites, because Eventually, what I felt had happened is that once it got distracted at the docking site, the contact which should have been there, possibly it was lacking, and that is why after about 9 centimeters of distraction over there, and once the weight bearing started, because of an improper contact, it went into a little angulation and it fractured a little later, sir. I'm not sure whether achieving a transverse kind of a bone end would have helped it, but that is what I would have been tempted to do, sir. But overall, wonderfully managed, sir. Thank you so much for showing this case.
Thanks, Dr. Manish. Is there any other question?
Dr. Jishnu?
Yes.
Hello.
Dr. Samshul, please go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Jishnu, what is the protocol of applying braces after removing laser to avoid refracture?
Protocol of after removing brace.
No, brace, yeah.
Brace. Okay.
To avoid
Most of
refracture.
we use a cast brace. First is after removal, we wait for a couple of days for the Pintrex to heal. Okay, and if the limb is swollen up, we know that that period of elevation and rest is important. They put a slab on that, and then once it's heals, we put in a cast brace, POP cast.
Yeah, definitely. Same. Just after removal, put a
For how
slab
long?
for at least one week or 2 weeks. Once the Pintrex are healed, then go for a PTB
Exactly.
for tibia, and thereafter you can go
So
for PTB brace or like that.
So you apply a PTB brace for how much?
Yeah, you can, after healing of the Pintrex, you can directly go for PTB brace or you can go for PTB cast.
The duration of PTB I'm asking.
Usually 2 to 3 weeks. We do not need
removing
to
the slab.
Yeah, not the slab. The patient is non-weight bearing with the slab.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, can I just speak a little bit?
Yeah, please, Ranjit sir, please.
Yeah. I think before removing the apparatus, we usually do a dynamization. We loosen the nuts in a like we loosen the nuts in the wheel of the car. Now, when we have to change the car wheel. So we dynamize it for some time till there is no pain from the patient side, and then you remove it, put on a slab for some time till the wound healed up. Then you put a PTB cast. Actually, that is, it may be 4 weeks, it may be 6 weeks, it may be even little less. It all depends what is the experience of the patient. If he says there is no pain, nothing that sort, I think we can go ahead. We have removed at least 3 weeks time sometimes. It takes sometimes 6 weeks time. So we make it sure that there is no refracture, because that has happened in many times in my hands. So we are very careful about this dynamization followed by PTB cast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The alignment is not proper. Actually, they are very prone to refractures. They are very prone. Sometimes. If the alignment-
Another point in refracture is a stiffness in the joints above or below.
Yeah.
This is another region.
Yes.
That's one of the
usually get,
one of the common cause for.
common cause.
Actually, Dr. Jishnu showed dynamization. He isn't it? Yeah. So he had removed bars and made a patient walk on it. So dynamization, as pointed out by sir, is absolutely necessary. In each and every case of my Elizaro, be it lengthening or be it non-union, I always dynamize before removal of the frame. Always.
Sir, yeah,
Yeah, Dr. Lenin, please go ahead.
sir, in my practice, what I do is I gradually deload the frame. Like if there are 3 wires in this one ring, I remove 1 wire. Gradually, I deload the frame so that the patient is bearing weight gradually from the frame to the bone. So after enough wires have been removed, then for 2-3 weeks, I put a PTB cast directly. And what I have seen is if we use a proper frame with proper tensionized wire, even if you put a complete cast, immediately after the removal of the frame, after removal of the cast, I don't see any problem of infection in the Pintrex wounds. That's what I have seen.
Actually, gradually removing each wire is also one of the gradual dynamization. Actually,
It's a method of dynamization. Yes.
Gradual sort of dynamization, basically.
Works very well. I agree with you, Dr. Lenin.
But sometimes if there is, suppose there is some delayed union or something, or consolidation is not there, proper consolidation, instead of removing the wires, it is ideal to loosen the nuts so that you can utilize the ring immediately if the patient has got some problem.
Yeah, there are ways of dynamization.
Yeah.
First, loosening and making rings loose by 3 to 5 millimeters, reducing number of bars in between. And the last thing is reducing number of wires. So there are stages of dynamization.
Okay.
So they work very well, but it is very important thing. Good that it was brought up. Dynamization is a very important thing. And I also agree with Dr. Lenin. If the pin tracks are not too bad, even I directly go for PTB cast. So usually there is no problem if pin tracks are not too bad.
Yeah.
Actually, what we do, ma'am, just after the frame removal, we just put a slab and just order the brace. And within that time period, if the brace is coming, that we directly go for PTB brace. And 2 to 3 days, PTB brace is ready after the measurements and all, and we apply directly the brace.
Okay.
Dr. Manish, please.
Sir, one small question I would like to ask you opinion of senior people and everybody. Sir, in a case where the alignment was not perfect like this, which can happen, such it was a very good salvage procedure for this case. Before the removal of the ring, is it okay if we can get a CT scan done for the docking side and assess whether the union is perfect and consolidation has happened? Because whatever you do, sir, the rest, everything else is an indirect, indication. Whereas if you get a CT scan done, which we do get done for some cases of delayed unions where we are in doubt whether we have to do something for the patient, intervene, or just make the patient continue with the same treatment. We just wanted to take the opinion of Dr. Jishnu as well as
Yes, we are doing CTs now in such a doubtful cases. We're doing CTs. The sagittal cuts give us an idea about the continuity of the cortex and the medullary canal. These are very useful nowadays, but we don't routinely do it because it's all about clinical judgment.
Of course, sir. Routinely,
This case needed a CT scan. I mean, we were confused with the clinical and radiological picture for a long time.
Sir.
So CT scan would have helped.
Sir. Thank you.
I do CT very rarely in very specific cases, very rarely actually. I believe in clinical judgment and I take many multiple X-rays in different planes.
Okay.
So, but I agree in such cases, CT would have been useful. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Dr. Jayan, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Ravi. And Dr. Jishnu, excellent case. Just one query I have with everyone is that you started your treatment with doing compression. Could we have started with bone transport by doing a corticotomy and starting a bone transport from day one?
Yes, the choice was always there.
Possibility also? Yeah.
Yes, why not? Bone transport or getting the length of the limb first before addressing the other issues is always a option. Here, the first thing was not actually the closure of the gap. The first idea was to get the ankle equinus corrected and have a plantarate foot. And in that method, because the gap closure causes relaxation of the posterior soft tissue, it actually helped us to get the ankle equinus corrected. So once we did two things with the same two birds with the same stone, so we got this as a single unit. Then the next thing was we started to create the length of the limb at the same time steadily. I was not sure.
I like what you did. I was just thinking that so it probably helped your getting your equinus back more easily. That's what your compression did. That's what the whole idea is.
Do the panelists do routinely acute docking and re-lengthening or favor transport? What is the opinion of the house about docking and re-lengthening versus keeping the length at the same of the limb okay and doing a transport?
Well, if the it differs from case to case actually, but if the shortening or the gap is say 3 to 4 centimeters, I always prefer compression and corticotomy above than internal bone transport. That's my preference. But if the gap is huge, like say 8-9 centimeters, then I might go for bone transport. But my preference is for compression and lengthening. That's my preference.
Yeah, agree with
so
ma'am. Agree with ma'am. For short distances, you can dock it, but for long distances, I think you should avoid docking because soft tissue and all that issues are there.
Yeah, I think my that is 3 centimeters. So I think more or less we
Yeah, for
agree
2
on
to
that.
3 centimeter docking is okay, but for 6 to 7 or 8 centimeters, it's
So it's
better
not.
to avoid it. Better to avoid it.
Sir, 3 centimeters in tibia and up to 5 centimeters in femur is recommended and
It's
tolerated
theoretically
without
recommended.
the kinking of the vessels and the nerves. So
You never know, Dr. Manish. You
Yes,
never know. I have seen even 2 centimeters acute docking and the pulse disappeared.
Actually,
correct, ma'am.
Never
Correct,
know.
ma'am. That's
Always-
always there. So
Always
what you
monitor
said
the
is
pulse and go
yes,
for
ma'am.
acute docking.
Yes, what you said
either
is right.
monitor the pulse or use the hand Doppler. With the
Yeah.
help of Doppler, you
Or
just
use the
whenever you are
Doppler.
docking, use a Doppler and just see whether the vessel's flow is good or not.
Yeah.
If the flow is diminishing, stop there.
Such cases will always have a compromised neurovascular status, sir. So
Yeah, already
it is always better
it
to
is.
keep it
Already it is compromised.
under monitoring. Yes,
So it's better to avoid long compressions.
absolutely.
So now we can move. It's a night.
Yeah,
discussion.
let's
Next.
move on
Next
to
Now
the
move to
next.
the next. Ranjit sir, please. So our next presentation will be Professor Ranjit Barua.
Can you see my?
Yes, sir. It's your slide screen is coming, but not the PPT.
Just a moment. It was here only.
Yeah, no, nice.
I think I can go ahead.
Yeah, please, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. After Jishnu's very nice presentation, I'm in fact bringing out my oldest case from my archive, almost 26 years old, because this is the case I started learning Ilizarov with so much of handicap of poor knowledge, then infrastructure. I'm talking about April 2000, 1994. I think at that point of time, Ilizarov was very nascent in this part of the country. So I learned so many things. So I just wanted to share this difficult case with the panel as well as for the people or the delegates who are attending to this. So it is nothing but the success story of Ilizarov in chronic non-union of tibia with 18 years of morbidity. That is what I wanted to share with you all people. She was 18 years. She was born with CPT with neurofibromatosis. What a case to take up as a first case in life in Ilizarov. She underwent 3 unsuccessful surgery elsewhere. And when she presented to me, it was a type 1 infected non-union of H. rosen. She had neurofibromatosis nodule all over the body, but the spine was free. And she had this amount of shortening, quite shortening. She had around 9 to 10 centimeter limb length shortening. And then there was a scars of surgery, previous surgery, healed and active draining sinuses. Why it is not going? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
But my slides are not proceeding.
Are you are you using the MacBook?
Yeah.
Just tap on the touchpad, sir.
Okay. So this is what the picture look like. You can see the extensive sequestration, short limb and other problems in this case. So with a little knowledge about the case and then what I'm going to do on this case, I anticipated some hurdles. Because of chronic infection, neurofibromatosis, and long duration of non-weight bearing, the bone quality would definitely be very poor. You see, there is a repeated failures. So the family was frustrated. And the girl was indoor since her birth. So she had a very poor psychological compliance and leading to a social isolation. And patient was a very poor family. When they came to me after 3 unsuccessful surgery, after 18 years of life, they came to go for an amputation. But I have some second thought and I discussed with them. So my first reaction with them was to give an assurance with repeated meditations, telling them that what are the benefits. We can do an amputation at any point of time, but let us try something new which is coming. Probably she will be benefited by this. In the meantime, when the people agreed to my advice, we build up the nutrition by food as well as by supplementation. We did a radical debridement with 3-ring assembly because the distal fragment is too small and all wire frame. And we did not close the debridement wound. We allowed it to heal by secondary intention. By about 3 weeks' time, when the wound appeared normal and there was no apparent clinically infection, we went ahead with do an osteotomy or a corticotomy. The strategy of bone transport that was being discussed just in Jishnu's case, but I followed the textbook. What textbook tells us that she had a gap of around 8 centimeters in between the fragments. So I did an internal bone transport. And she had a limb length discrepancy of about 10 centimeters. So I decided to get a docking first to get some signs of healing and then go ahead with the lengthening of the limb by external bone transport. So as I did the debridement of the things, fitted the apparatus to the limb, initially there is a good, within 30 to 40 days, there's a good normal regenerate. I was very happy. But as the time passed, it started to show hyporegenerate type C. As you can see here, it's like broken fragments inside. So what to do at this point of time? In fact, I had only one book that was being published from Miraz by Ruta Kulkarni's place. And there was a small article on that. We told a little bit about the accordion maneuver. So I started doing, so what I started doing, I knew that this is because of disability and some poor vascularity. So what remedies I put in to correct this hyporegenerate? Augmentation. We put some olive wires and then put extension plates on both the sides. Then we definitely enhanced the nutrition, reduced the distraction rate to 0.5 millimeter per day. Then we did very frequently, very religiously, retensioning of the wires, tightening of the clamps and the bolts. And of course, I was very fascinated by Austin mode. It is like grasping anything you get when you are drowning. So this is this accordion maneuver came to me is just like that. So I grasped it, started doing accordion maneuver. And of course, I took the help of the dedicated physiotherapist and started mobilizing. So the patient went ahead and then started to have good regenerate in due course of time. Even then, in case of external bone transport, we had the same problem of type C hyporegenerate. So we resorted to the same technique, and you can look at this, the difference between these two cycles of accordion maneuver mimicry. So I told you accordion maneuver was something like a grasping item for me in a drowning person. So I developed some interest on this. So we published 2 papers on this, and we have developed a little bit of our own sort of protocol for this. So what was the result in this case? It was a long period of disability, almost 18 years. And the last 15 years, he had infected non-union from the previous surgery. And to our happiness, as well as to the happiness of the patient, there is no recurrence of infection till 26 years of follow-up. So that was, I think this is one of the greatest achievement for this particular patient. Definitely, we had pin track infections. Grade 1, grade 2 was very common and frequent, and we treated accordingly. We had 2 occasions of grade 3 for which we had to remove the wires and put it in some other places. As usual, as we have discussed, we put a PTB cast after some amount of dynamization, and then we kept this cast for at least 6 week time for this particular patient, considering her response, how she is feeling inside the cast. She has some residual deformity or range of movement loss at the knee joint. Her range of movement was 15, 120 degree. An ankle was fused in equinus around 10 degrees and valgus was 5 degrees. And this equinus was present since she presented to me. So this is the apparatus duration was 1 year, 4 months. And then this is the calculation we had to, I took up just to how the things go ahead. And as you can see that this is a girl, she's very happy, good clinical, functional and radiological union. Just for comparison, the past X-ray I have shown to you. And this is again another clinical improvement. So this is what I learned from this first case, and that helped me to carry out Elizarov as a device to treat almost all cases in orthopedic, especially the difficult cases. So number one was, I always took it as a number one, psychological support equally important as surgery. You cannot operate on a patient without gaining good confidence, showing them your results and other things, then only, because these cases, they are psychologically unstable. So this point is very important. We knew that infection can be eradicated by radical excision, but instability needs augmentation at any point of time. I think Elizarov surgery starts only after you fit the apparatus. It only starts from there. It's not like any other surgery, plating or nailing or whatever it is. It finishes moment you come out of the OT. It starts after you finish the surgery, your Elizarov starts then. We found accordion maneuver a powerful tool to tackle hyporegenerate in long segment transport, as well as in non-unions. Pin track infections are there, but it can be kept because a long haul for this case, 10 centimeter and 8 centimeter. So pin track infection kept at minimum by regular tightening of system and meticulous pin track care. And last but not the least, enhanced nutrition, continuously dedicated physiotherapy and mobilization. I think these are the keys for the success of this my case. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. I'm through my presentation.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for a lovely case. And I totally agree with the point that psychological counseling is very important, especially in these cases of CPT. And that point was really well taken. Very good case, sir, and fantastic follow-up.
Yeah.
The union in such a type of dysplastic neurofibromatosis cases is actually very difficult. So you got very good union. How much time did it take, sir?
The system was there for 1 year, 4 months.
Okay. Great.
Because I knew that at that point of time that the transport should be done first for the gap, and then only once you get docking, you go ahead and do the external bone transport. And in this case, we could not go ahead with doing a bifocal or trifocal osteotomy because the distal fragment was too small.
Very small.
And by Pele's trifocal in that transmotic fragment also could not be done because I was not sure about the bone quality. I just passed the wires with the hand, no drill. So that is why it took longer time in our hand. But
still 1 year, 4 months is not too long for such case to unite.
Definitely.
What about bone grafting, sir? Did you do bone grafting?
No.
Because CPT uniting without bone grafting is difficult to digest. Yeah.
Because Elizarov is because it creates bone without grafting. So that is,
but CPT is a different issue. But still, great.
Thank you, sir. Nice presentation, actually. Is there any other question from the panel?
Ruta ma'am?
Yeah,
in such cases of CPT, I have one failure case which I could not heal the patient, do
Yeah.
you do, is there a concept of periosteal grafting?
Periosteal
at the
grafting?
neurofibroma? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I do periosteal grafting. I take periosteum from the inner table. I do
Of the
remove
iliac crest.
of the iliac crest. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and I remove a good amount of graft from the iliac crest. I always do bone grafting in CPT. And nowadays, as Pale has suggested, I try to do cross union between tibia and fibula. So I put a huge amount of graft there. I do periosteal grafting. So the concepts of CPT have now changed a lot. Actually, there are many new things which have come up. But as you asked, periosteal graft definitely helps. I do it regularly.
And ma'am, is it with Ilizarov or intramedullary device?
I do it with Ilizarov, but I put intramedullary device and Ilizarov both. Intramedullary nail, usually a rush rod, and Ilizarov. Both.
We have some experience of this periosteal grafting along with Hamjit. We failed in that case. Probably, I don't know, maybe the excision was not adequate, but we took good amount of graft from the inner table as well as the steel.
We did almost every step that Madam has just explained regarding grafting, putting a nail, ring, corticotomy, and then periosteal graft, but still it failed.
CPT is very, very unpredictable.
Very unpredictable.
Yeah, so in spite
And it
of
was
notorious for that actually.
Before that child came to us, he was already operated 4 or 5 times already. Different surgeries were already he went through it. So we tried our best. We put in everything, but still it failed.
I think here it is the persistence of some pathological tissue that proliferates and that eats away everything we put in. I think
yes, that's a very, very important point. Actually, we have to remove the entire pathological periosteum. Everybody knows now that it's a periosteal disease. The bone is not too bad, but the periosteum is hamartomatous. So you have to resect it thoroughly, completely, and then replace it with a good periosteum, put a lot of bone graft, try to achieve cross union, put an intramedullary nail, and put a fixator. So, but even then it can fail, as Dr. Himjit said. It can, yeah.
Dr. Jayant, you had one question. Jayant sir, you had question.
Yeah. I was just trying to say that my experience also of CPT is like Dr. Barua's, and maybe I am a bit lucky that way. But most of my cases were done maybe about 10 years back, because since then we have a pediatric surgeon in our hospital who now looks after the CPTs. So at that time we were just doing the significant excision, radical excision, and then doing a transport and union. And I think I must have done about 5 cases at that time. 4 we got good result. 1 had non-union, and he still comes to me after nearly 20 years, but he doesn't want his surgery. He just wants a change in his PTB brace.
Okay. And nowadays, actually, they say that you don't even have to do radical excision. And my experience is same. Actually, the bone is not too bad. The bone vascularity is quite good. So it's the periosteum which you should.
Yes, so I agree. The concepts have changed over a period of time.
The concepts have changed a lot.
Talking about at that time, the periosteal part was not given that much significance. But now, because my pediatric colleague does these cases, so he tackles them differently.
But Dr. Barua sir's case is amazing. I mean, he got union even without bone grafting, and it was a neurofibromatosis, which is the worst case.
Yes. Significant challenge, and I think I have similar experience that the bone transport was at half the rate. It required a lot of patience, accordion, and all the things that he's saying makes me relive the whole thing that we went back 20 years back, So excellent case, and I can feel all the challenges that he faced. Great case.
Thanks, Dr. Jain. So
Ravi, shall we move
now we
forward?
can, yeah, ma'am, definitely. Dr. Das, you
Yes,
can share your
yes, sir.
picture.
Am I visible, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So after two stalwarts of Elizabeth speaking ahead of me of this region, I'm on a shaky ground. I will try to justify with my presentation. So this is a very interesting case report on post-infective shortening of the femur with a deformed and ankylosed knee. This was the case with which I started my journey of Elizarov way back in 2012. So my patient was a very young lady of 25 years, coming from a far-flung district, accompanied by her mother. She presented us with a history of septic arteries of the right knee at the age of 13 years, followed by recurrent episodes of pain, swelling, discharging sinuses in the subsequent years, for which she had undergone multiple INDs and a lot of herbal treatments at a native village. So this was her presentation. She presented us with a very short limb and a very severe FFD of the knee for the last 12 years. So with this amount of deformity, she was basically walking only with 2 crutches and a tiptoe touching gait. Her physical examination revealed a bony ankylosis, fixed at 70 degree of FFD, and a further 10 degree FFD at the hip. There was a combined shortening of 7 centimeters. There were a lot of heel sinuses around the knee and the leg. And most importantly, we found a scarred, contracted, and popliteal soft tissue. There was compensatory equinus at the ankle, as well as compensatory lordosis and scoliosis of the spine, the pelvic tilt. However, the neurovascular status of a limb was within normal limits. So these are her clinical pictures. You can appreciate the amount of sinuses, scarred tissues, and the top area around the popliteal popliteal region of her knee. We advised few X-rays for her, and you can appreciate that it is a uniapical sagittal plane deformity with a fixed bony ankylosis of her knee. Long films of femur with the hip joints were almost okay. X-ray of her ankle showed a lot of osteopenia, as she was mostly walking on her tip of her toes, and lucky for me that she at least had some amount of tibio-talar joint space. Once history was there, along with our X-rays and clinical picture, I formulated my aims of her treatment. My primary aim, as well as the patient's primary aim to come for treatment, was to correct her primary deformity. Also, I wanted to achieve the length, regain the length, to provide her a bipedal locomotion with the limb in a functional position. And this surgery had to be urgent so that other compensatory deformities of our spine, pelvis, and ankle do not become permanent. And while doing all these corrections, we had to avoid any catastrophe of the neurovascular status. So how I plan? We followed the principles of deformity correction as done by in Elizarov techniques, or mostly on all types of osteotomies. You do it. We find out the true apex, the porus, the mid-diaphyseal line joining the bisecting each other's. We find out the magnitude of deformities. Few dilemmas came to my mind at that time, because it was the first case I had started with Elizarov. So I had some dilemmas. My dilemma was between open wedge to closed wedge or single versus stage. In my case, I selected a closed wedge and a stage procedure. Seeing, as you could appreciate, the amount of deformity, and it was very long-standing, the popliteal neurovascular bundle was the limiting factor in deciding my speed of correction. So if an osteotomy would have healed up prior to my correction, it would not have helped me. So open wedge osteotomy I could not go for. So I selected a closed wedge that allowed me faster correction of the deformity and effectively slightly shortens the femur as well as the soft tissues around that scarred knee. So thereby helping me to not to have any distraction of the neural structures, because the nerves will elongate, we cannot stretch beyond 1 millimeter per day. And I selected a staged procedure where I did the osteotomy followed by lengthening procedure. So essentially what I did was I followed the rule of osteotomy 1, where I did the osteotomy cora. It was a resection type of wedge osteotomy where the apex was lying posteriorly on the suprapatellar region. The basic frame construct consisted of 2 rings above and 2 rings below the osteotomy, and those were perpendicular to the anatomical axis. Hinges we placed for correction was a compressive type of hinge. On this X-ray, you can appreciate that the hinges lying on the apex or lying on the plane of the apex of the wedge that we had taken out on the concave side, because it was a compressive type of hinge. And the distract or the motor unit is lying posteriorly midway between those middle and lateral hinges in line with the bone axis. Correction of angular deformity followed the standard law of similar triangles. Correction of this was achieved in 1 month. This was sequential correction achieved of her deformity, flexion deformity. These are her clinical pictures. So once I was happy to get my leg straightened out without any catastrophic neurovascular complication, I now had to manage the limb length discrepancy. At this stage, I simply changed the hinges to solid threaded rods. Corticotomy, I selected the proximal femoral metaphysis because I wanted to be away from any zone of infection around the joint, around the knee joint. An additional ring at that stage was also provided for greater stability. Lengthening followed standard Mellon of 1 millimeter per day. Osteotomy site, however, at this duration, was alter time compressed at 1/4 millimeter every alternate day, just to be sure that we had a good union at that area. These are our sequential X-rays. You can appreciate the amount of good regenerate we had by the end of 6 months. At the end of 7 months, we length achieved. Regenerates were satisfactory. Fixator removed. We put plaster for 6 weeks. Before removing the ring, the equinus, which was quite rigid to start with because of the scarred popliteal tissue. So I had to do a tenotomy, that was percutaneous level jet tenotomy, and I put a laser foot frame for gradual correction. And during entire course of this treatment, we also saw that her gradually lumbar scoliosis and pelvic tilt was gradually getting corrected. I did a final evaluation of the young lady at 12 months after completion of treatment. The most important part for me was patient was walking now and unaided and without discomfort. And X-ray showed us a very well remodeled bone. Some pin track infections were, however, encountered that were dealt with. This was only grade 1 or 2. So this is her clinical picture at final evaluation. Patient, as you can see from her face, she is happy. A happy patient, and I'm also happy. Surgeon is always happy seeing the patient happy. So this was after the correction. You can appreciate that this is the amount of scar tissue through which our deformity had to be corrected. So popliteal area, you could see so much deep scars. So we need to, and all these anterior as well as on the tibia, so many scar tissue. So we had to correct our angular deformity through stretching out these tissues. And this was a video she had sent her from home some time back. So she walks without any aids, and she's happy. Ankle movements. This was her X-ray post removal of her rings. So this type of condition, positive literature is very much positive literature is there, but this probably is common in India, because when I attend any disability clinics or camps, I usually see 1 to 2 cases of this type of deformity. Patient unwilling to get it corrected, stays in far-flung areas. I tried to went into literature for this, but unfortunately, I got only few case, you could say case reports not a big case series where we could get some general guidelines for young surgeons like me to undergo treatment for this type of conditions. So in my case, where I did an anti-beds closed with osteotomy with gradual correction, helped me to protect the posterior neurovascular bundles. One point I'd like to highlight is because, as we know, femur and tibias are very long bones, and this situation where especially my situation where a lot of severe contractures were there, they were long standing. So it was 12 years down the line. So to avoid any resistance to correction, I did a very long spanning of the frames from proximal femoral metaphysis to distal tibial metaphysis. So my take-home message for this from her case is for our techniques awaited the need for any extensive soft tissue reconstruction procedures. It could achieve results without causing traction injury to the neurovascular structures. Elizarov allows mobilization during an entire course of treatment, and a proper preoperative plan with careful selection of patient is essential to avoid any complications. I thank everyone for patient hearing, and I thank Asami members and panelists to allow me to have a small step on the platform, and I hope to grow with this platform in future, and I will always hope to come back again and share my experiences at a later date. Thank you very much again. Thank you for the patient hearing.
Thanks, Dr. Das. It was nice case, well planned, well executed. Thanks a lot for your case. Now I invite panel for any question to Dr. Das.
Dr. Das, why did you choose to lengthen femur? Why not tibia? Because tibial lengthening would have been way easier. Why did you go
ma'am,
for
if you her clinical photos, you could appreciate that there were sinuses up till the proximal leg, middle third of the leg. So and calf tissues were scarred enough. So I did not. I tried to be as corticotomy to be at a healthier location. So
was the infection active or it was healed infection?
It was healed for. It was not. It was healed for at least 2 years when she came to us. So it was not draining, non-draining. But I didn't take a chance to go through the reason. So I instead tried to go through a healthy bone and a healthy soft tissue.
All right. Good, well executed case.
Nice. Is there any other question from the panel?
Yeah, Dr. Das.
Yes.
I would advise you to your juniors to never give this such kind of case as a first case.
Good advice.
Is there any other question, Dr. Samshol, Dr. Manish?
So I just want to compliment Dr. Das that at this stage, some time back, he has achieved it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Very good case. Very nice.
Thank you, sir.
So now we move to the next case presentation by Dr. Chetan. Dr. Chetan, please share your screen.
Good evening, everybody. I'm talking about the primary Elizarov for a surgical site infection. To prevent surgical site infections, because as we know that in tibial condyle fracture, the infection is very common, and post-surgery, the only thing which a surgeon is always worried about is actually infection. So if we apply Elizarov on day one, at least we can be sure of that the patient will not suffer from a deep-seated infection. So coming to the introduction, from the era of infection leading to amputation, we have actually come a long way thanks to the present generation of antibiotics and sterility which we maintain. But then even then, like as soon as the patient calls up and says that there's some discharge from the wound, it gives a lot of palpitation. And one surgery where we are more prone for infection, or where we always worried about infection, is the tibial plateau fracture because of the internal degloving, which plays a very important role. Now, coming to my case, my patient is a 72-year-old male who is a retired engineer. His children have settled in US. He and his wife, they live alone. He is a diabetic, post-bypass on ecosprin. He had a history of RTA where he was hit by a four-wheeler from the side, and he presented 24 hours after the injury. There was a gross swelling with impeding blisters of the knee and leg, and there was no neurovascular deficit. After 48 hours of injury, this was his presentation of the leg. So it was full of blisters, and his X-ray was actually comparatively very benign. It was more of a Satchker type 2, but because there was an extension, there was a metaphyseal diphyseal dissociation. So we'll have to call it as a Satchker type 6 fracture. And the CT scan, which is not available at the moment, showed a posteromedial fragment as well. So if we talk about Lowe's classification, there was a posteromedial fragment along with the anterolateral fracture with depression. Now, my dilemma was the son was constantly calling from US, okay, sir, do whatever, but make sure that my father recovers completely and he's able to walk normally, as he has to live alone with his wife. So, and just before this surgery, I had done this surgery where there was a similar kind of soft tissue injury with a extra articular proximal tibia fracture. I had applied a spanning fixator and traction initially, and waited for the soft tissue to recover. And then I'd applied a plate, and I was very happy after the fixation. But then, like after 10 days post-surgery, there was a wound gapping and there was a pulmonary discharge. Now, the kind of stress which I had to go through because of this, I mean, it's not just the patient, it's the surgeon who actually goes through more stress when they see something like this post-surgery. So this really was running in my mind constantly, and I had decided that come what may, at least I will not go ahead with the plating in this case. So I decided to go ahead with Ilizarov, and it's not just this case. I've been regularly doing Ilizarov for tibial plateau fracture after this example which I had to go through. So I had the option of applying a 5x8 ring with 2 full rings, or maybe like 3 full rings, or maybe a simple 5x8 ring with a universal rod with clamps. But because I wanted to mobilize the limb from day one, and because I wanted to weight bear him a little early, so I decided to go ahead with the 5x8 ring with 2 full rings. So I put him on the fracture table, applied, used a pointed reduction clamp to reduce it, and then like after using a small window, I had lifted the elevated fragment. I mean, I had elevated the fragment and put bone graft, and then applied a cannulated cancellous screw, and above that we applied a 5x8 ring with 2 full rings. So the other option was I could have done something like this, but then like decided to go ahead with this. And in some other cases, like if we can also use olive wires instead of using the cancellous screw. So in my case, I had used an olive wire as well along with the cancellous screw, and this was the X-ray 1 month after the surgery, where the fracture was well aligned. And this was the reduction after 2 months of surgery. And 1 month post-surgery, this was his clinical picture. The smile on the face really made me happy. At least he was not suffering from any infection or anything, and he had a good range of motion. So this was his range of motion. This was his range of motion 1 month after the surgery, and he was quite comfortable with the rings. And 4 months after the fixator, I had removed, after the surgery, I had removed the fixator, and this was his range of motion, where he got almost 130 to 140 degree knee flexion, and there was no extensor lag. The good advantage about the ring is because of the ring, the quadriceps, they remain healthy and they work properly. So we don't get too much of extensor lag after Ilizarov in tibial plateau fracture. So this was his range of motion just before removal of the fixator. And I had called him day before yesterday asking for the X-rays. He was more than willing to go and get the X-ray even in COVID times, because he was quite happy and satisfied with the result. He's able to sit cross-legged, and because he loves to do puja at home. And this was his clinical picture. I mean, compared to the previous 3 cases which have been presented, I have posted a very simple, straightforward case, because most of the times in a corporate hospital, we don't get too many infected non-unions. And if we have to start with the Ilizarov for fracture, I mean, this is one of the most simple and straightforward case where we should always start with. So now coming to the Ilizarov, I mean, a lot of things have changed rapidly when it comes to orthopedics and when it comes to fixation. But one thing has remained constant when it comes to tibial plateau is in last 20-25 years of papers, if we see, there have been constant papers which have shown that Ilizarov has been a very good method of fixation with a very good definite good results with very less complication. And this our study is actually the study which was done by Assam Medical College in Dibrugarh. So all in all, Ilizarov is should be a preferred method of treatment when it comes to tibial plateau fracture, because we can mobilize the knee from day one, and we need not worry about the deep-seated infection, which we are always worried about when we apply a 1-plate, 2-plate, or 3-plate fixation of tibial plateau. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Chetan.
Thank you.
Actually, for any tibial plateau fractures which have the soft tissue complications and soft tissue issues, Ilizarov is one of the best modality to use, actually. So, from panel, is there any question?
Just two questions, Dr. Chetan.
Yeah.
Number one, in your case, I saw the Ilizarov ring was not aligned with the tibial shaft. It was a bit oblique. And number two, your pins were protruding very long. Why did you cut the pins?
Yeah, I could have. Pins were quite long. Yeah, they could have.
And the ring
quite-
has to be in alignment with the limb. That was a little oblique. Otherwise, it is very good, very well done case. Normally, I use Ilizarov in the most complex tibial plateau fractures. We use polyvarves only.
Yeah, so for the ring alignment is concerned, probably it's more of because of the X-ray. I mean, if you see the clinical picture, the ring is quite aligned.
Okay.
A good case, Dr. Kabra. I totally agree with you. Ilizarov is a very good modality of treatment in tibial plateau fractures, especially because of fear of infection, compartment syndrome, and so many other things. There is usually bad soft tissue trauma associated with these fractures. So I wanted to ask you, how many days do you wait? Do you wait for application of Ilizarov, or you just go ahead immediately?
No, ma'am. I try to convince the patient the very first day or second day itself that I'll go ahead with the ring fixator. I can assure you at least the infection won't be a problem, and you'll be able to bend the knee from day 1 or day 2. And don't worry about the soft tissues. So normally I apply the fixator on the second or third day itself, ma'am.
Yeah, that's the advantage, because if you want to go for internal fixation, you have to wait for quite a long, because in this case, I could see there were so many blisters. There was huge swelling, but with Ilizarov, you can go ahead in 1 or 2 days, I guess.
True, ma'am.
Yeah.
Still, ma'am, we have to wait a few days, ma'am, because there is an compartment we have to do fasciotomy. And normally we wait and elevate and wait 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, but in internal fixation, you have to wait pretty long. You
Almost
span
2 to 3
the
days.
joint.
Exactly, ma'am.
Yeah, so
sometimes.
not as long as that.
Actually, in what ma'am is saying and what Dr. Chetan, you are saying that what ma'am is asking for how many days you wait. Actually, I prefer if the patient is having so much of bad tissue, then the comminution is much more, or there are the fragments which are posteromedial or posterolateral, in which you require a kind of mini open reduction. Then it's better to wait for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. In that case, we should wait for 4 to 5 days.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly.
In those specific cases, basically. Otherwise, the Ilizarov, you can apply it on the first day itself.
Very much.
Exactly.
But in those
In case we
specific,
have to make a small window or something, and there is a blister,
because
definitely we
in
should
the
wait for 2 days.
posteromedial and posterolateral fragments, it's very difficult to reduce those fragments, and sometimes it becomes very hard to. You need to do the mini open reduction, just like joystick method, or just by putting the artery in the back and just reduce it. So you require a mini open. So in that way, I think you should wait for 4 or 5 days.
Okay. And in those cases,
4
like
or
a full
5
ring
days
should
is
be better.
fine, but once you fix the fracture, actually the edema, once you stabilize the fracture, the
Ma'am.
edema reduces. So, the point I wanted to make is that you don't have to wait as
Actually,
Definitely, ma'am. Definitely.
internal fixation.
Yeah.
You can even
if we
apply it
do
on the first day
fasciotomy.
itself. If the fracture is directly, you can reduce it. You can apply it on the first day, even with the blisters.
Yes,
No issue
that's
with
what I
that.
wanted.
Even I've done in a case, ma'am, when I have to do fasciotomy and over it, I can do Ilizarov. The same setting.
Actually, fasciotomy is not always required if there is no compartment. As
In
such, and there is no
1 or 2 cases,
If
I
there is
had to face.
impending compartment,
Yeah.
then
Yeah, there is
1
no
or 2
need of
cases I had to face.
because if
And
you are doing
the same setting,
fasciotomy,
in 1 case I faced impending compartment and I had to do fasciotomy and Ilizarov on the same setting.
because if
And
you are doing
later-
fasciotomy,
yeah. And
you are
later I
moving
did
into
skin
the.
graft over it.
If you are going for fasciotomy, you are moving into a different go actually. Because
If
there
you're
will be a lot
getting
of other
a
complications with the
compartment, you have to do
fasciotomy.
1. Yeah. If
There
you're
are
getting a
quite a few studies which have shown that in case the blisters have come up, the chances of compartment reduces significantly. One of the papers was published last year in 2020, and there are quite a few papers earlier also, wherever there is a blister which is seen, the chances of compartment syndrome reduces, is what they are saying.
Blister
But,
in itself is a type 2 burn. It's a
Exactly.
decompression method in one way,
Exactly, that's the point.
basically.
But once you have got a compartment and you're going to do a fasciotomy, you have to do. Then you can do fasciotomy and laser in the same setting and do a skin graft later.
Is there any other question? Yeah, Dr. Manish, please go ahead.
Sir, firstly, Dr. Chetan, a nice case and very well presented. What I feel is that the secret of success of using Ilizarov in any periarticular fracture is that we are able to mobilize the joint early and provide an early weight bearing capacity to the patient. The two of them aid in a faster and a better remodeling of the fracture. Even if one is not able to address the intra-articular fragments as perfectly as one would do with the help of meticulously done open reduction and internal fixation, then also with the possibility of mobilizing the joint and providing an early weight bearing capacity, the end result is fantastic, and the patients do, the process of osteoarthritis gets significantly delayed, something which we are really worried about. So that is what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. Very well done, sir.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make one comment, Dr. Kabra. I feel that there is no need to use a 5/8 ring. You can use a full ring and still get away with about 100 degrees of flexion, because the 5/8 ring is not as stable as that. If you want to use a 5/8 ring, you should always attach one full ring to the 5/8 ring. Just one 5/8 ring in the proximal fragment is not a very stable construct. So instead, you either go for a full ring or attach one full ring to the 5/8.
Yeah,
Agree.
fully agreed with ma'am. Actually, we don't use 5/8 ring. We use a full ring always.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I learned my tibial plateau from Shah sir. Actually, my thesis was on tibial plateau, and
Okay.
Harshad Shah sir always told me, no, you are going to apply 5/8 ring on and not full ring. So I strictly follow his advice. Unless there is a posteromedial or posterolateral fragment, I generally apply a 5/8 ring.
Right.
And touch
No,
wood.
no, nobody will dare to violate the.
Yeah. So we
Shah
feel
sir's
fine.
advice. It's good.
Okay.
It's a just general comment and just a general
Yeah.
advice. So
I
now,
think we'll move ahead.
is there any other question? So now we can move to Dr. Lenin. Please share your screen.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Arunachal Pradesh, the easternmost frontier state of India. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are clearly audible and
Yeah,
visible. Please go ahead.
perfectly. Yes. So this is my first webinar. Since the start of pandemic, I've been avoiding and resisting all the webinar. I thought that this webinar thing is diluting the medical education, but so this is my first webinar. So I'm excited about it. So, and I thank Assami Northeast chapter for giving me this opportunity. I'm a BHU alumni, and during my post-graduation, I was lucky to learn the methods of Ilizarov from under Professor Amit Rastogi. I'm presenting a case of a young boy who had a road traffic accident in which he sustained right femur fracture closed and ipsilateral gustilo grade 3B fracture both bones right leg. The presentation is a story about how two young boys, me and the patient, struggled and fought and overcome difficulties over 2 years. So the femur was nailed, closed nailing, and it went uneventful. There's nothing to discuss about the femur. Initially, as an emergency management of the polytrauma, the open fracture was stabilized with a uniplanar fixator available to me at the time. But within a month after the initial thorough debridement, the open fracture landed up in fulminant infection, and even with repeated debridement, I landed up having over 10 centimeters of bone loss. And I did not, after a year, after a month, I did not felt confident that I will do justice to the patient if I attempted bone transport over the monorail. So after some cajoling and counseling, the patient agreed for second surgery, where I removed the LRS, did a repeat debridement, and put 4 ring construct, and at the same sitting did a corticotomy. Within 3 months, I got enough regenerate, and the bone ends met at the docking site. There was a tilt of the distal fragment and malalignment in the docking site. By 8 months, there was good consolidation of the regenerate, but both me and the patient, we both realized probably we failed in achieving union at the docking site. And by this time, usually my patients are usually like they are well versed with Ilizarov, because probably my constant discussion with them. And he was very anxious to get rid of the frame. So we again had a discussion about the options. And when I told him about he can opt for internal fixation and bone grafting, he agreed to it. And at 9 months, I removed the frame, freshened up the edges. I took a generous bone graft from mallet crest, and I did plating for both the fibula and tibia. And luckily, at 14 months' time, there was visible union at the fracture end. And at 3 years age, after all the hardware removal, patient recently messaged me that whether he can run. He wants to do exercise. I said, no, brother, don't be that confident over the result, what we achieved together. This is his recent video when I had called him for this, preparing this PPT. He's having good functional result. So my presentation is over. Thank you.
You have another case?
No, I can, I think one case is enough for a day. All right. Okay, so the total duration of this treatment was 2 years. From the esteemed panelist, I would like to know what the mistakes I have done, and I would really want to, in future, in such cases, I would really want to reduce the total duration of the treatment. 2 years is a very long duration, and I would like to understand how to, in my future cases, how to get better alignment of the fragments.
Dr. Lenin, can I unshare your screen?
Yeah, you can.
Thank you. It was good case actually. You have achieved union very well, no doubt. But the period was long, quite long. And I think the main reason was the prolongation was the initial use of rail fixator, I think.
Yeah.
That have also increased your time, and later on internal fixation. But your ankle was malaligned.
Yeah.
No union was good.
Yeah.
Ma'am, any comment, please?
First of all, I want to thank Dr. Lenin that you participated. This is your first webinar.
Yeah.
So we are honored to have you. It was a difficult case, no doubt. I agree with Ravi. In first place, you could have applied Ilizarov fixator. That would have shortened to some extent. And if you had continued with the Ilizarov, actually the fracture would have united in some time, you know. As I already said, the accordion maneuver at the fracture site, and if need be, you can open the fracture site, freshen it, and if necessary, do bone grafting and continue with the Ilizarov frame instead of going for internal fixation. So if you had convinced the patient, you could have, you know, continued with the Ilizarov frame. But all in all, you achieved good result. There was a little instability in the frame, I feel. So because the frame was little unstable, you had angular deformity there.
Ma'am, instability in which segment?
I feel in the distal segment.
Distal part.
Distal segment.
Yeah, the distal one, yeah.
Because it was a short fragment. You should
there was one ring with 2 wires. Then there were 2 posts with 2 wires. 4 posts with 2 wires. So this was that was 2-level fixation.
Okay, so there were totally 4 wires in the distal fragment.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe it had been fixed in that way initially as well.
Yeah.
So it could be because of that. And what ma'am is saying is right actually. When you have changed your mind to moving to the plate, at that point of time you must have continued with the Lizarov, and if you have opened that site, then at that point of time you can correct the deformity as well at the non-union site, and by correcting you can readjust your frame basically if you want the proper alignment.
4 wires, I agree, 4 wires in the distal fragment is sufficient fixation, no doubt. But if the distal fragment is too small, then I sometimes fix even the foot, gives you more stability. So, but all in all, you achieved. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ravi.
Ranjit sir, please.
Yeah, you said about correction of deformity, like you continue with the Lizarov frame. Then at some point of time, you do open freshening up and put bone grafting and correction the deformity. At that point of time, do you do fibulectomy? Do you think that
Yes,
it is necessary?
Yes, sir. Sometimes necessary, sir. Necessary.
Yeah.
It is
That
necessary.
becomes
And
easier.
now, sir, nowadays,
even without doing bone grafting, if you just do the fibulectomy,
yeah,
put some olive wire above and below, and with tractionity you pull it, you hold it, and then do accordion maneuver. I think that would have helped.
yeah,
without doing
definitely,
any bone
sir.
grafting.
Even without bone grafting, it can work.
Yeah, yeah.
Even without bone grafting.
Because I'm very fond of doing accordion maneuver, so I would have thought in
Yeah,
that way.
me too.
Definitely, sir. It's not necessary.
It really helps.
It's not necessary that you need to bone graft.
But if
If
necessary,
you
you
do
can go
bone,
ahead and do bone grafting.
yeah, I do not understand. If you do bone grafting, you fail one part of Lizarov.
No, sir. That's
another take, sir. That's another take.
Exactly, sir. Yeah.
And besides, such deformities can be corrected even without opening up the frame. There are multiple ways of peri-mounting and correcting and the angulations that creep in during long. So we often do that. Put some hinges lateral, medial, anterior, posterior, and then the differential extraction.
Even nowadays in our setup, if there is a significant deformity, then we use 6FX or 6-axis correction systems between those two rings, and it can correct the deformity very well. No doubt that's a different issue, but just to correct the deformity as such. So, is there any other question from the panel?
Just the same thing. Advice to apply is the first.
Definitely. That rail fixator could have been avoided.
Right.
Sir, was this the last presentation, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, so in that case, can I just ask a small question from Professor Barua, sir?
No, it's not small. You can ask the big question also.
Sir, you had presented that case. It was a real challenge, and as Dr. Ruta has already spoken about it, that you managed to get the union in such a pathological issue, sir. Sir, I would just like to take some tips from you. How do you ensure the frame stability when, in spite of, you had this case where you said that you could pass the wires just with your hand. So how would you ensure that long-term stability, sir? Because the frame had to remain there. If you could educate us on that, sir.
Yes. So the theory part apart, let us not bring the theory into it. But practically, once you augment the frame, there are suggestions in your books. If you augment it, say you can even in that girl, I put even the olive wire without any drilling, just a small nick, and I put the olive wire. But then when they were counter opposing to each other, they produce an extensive amount of stability. So adding some wires, additional, number one, and number two, adding extension plate on either side. So that also helped me to improve the stability. And number most important point is the improving the condition of the bone by good nutrition, good psychological impact, and weight bearing. I think these are the most important points I took up to face the challenge. So, and it was a gradual process. It is not that I put the wire today and day after tomorrow it will become stable. I think it took some time. And then another important point I forgot to highlight is the tightening of the tensioning, retensioning of the wires. That time it was, I used to get it from one farm in Delhi. So wires are not very good. So while retensioning them 2 or 3 times, they broke. So I had to put it again. So the same track or little bit here and there. So retensioning and the tightening of the clamps and the bolts and everything very frequently is very important. And this point was highlighted by Dr. Milin after, say, about 15-20 years. He had, even in his, I think in those earlier cases, he did not have any clue. No bone was forming. He sat down, started doing tensioning his wires and tightening all bolts. And at least every alternate day, slowly the bone started to coming. I think that stability I achieve in that way.
So I totally agree, sir. So adding number of wires, more wires, adding olive wires, making the frame more rigid. So these are some points to add stability to the frame. And as sir said, tensioning, yes. Loss of tension is the important cause of instability in the frame.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
And
And
now,
don't
sir,
use shank spins. That is very important. No roll of shank spins at all.
No, and another important point that when you keep on tightening and retensioning these wires, even the infection subsides. Very interesting. Even the infection, because probably the additional stability improves the blood supply and the infection is combated nicely.
and now, sir, since you did that case, you mentioned probably in 1990, if I'm not
90, yeah, 94. Elizarov
Somewhere
came
around.
to India in 1889, I suppose. Kulkarni, Ruta can tell.
Yes.
89.
Sir, so over these years, now if you look at the present scenario, sir, have you kind of started using any other adjuncts or some medicines, some drugs which you feel that may improve the thing, or it is the good old school teachings, weight bearing?
These are all blind. These are all industry sponsored items. I don't believe in them.
Yeah, I agree, sir. Agree.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, sir.
There are a lot of
Weight bearing, when patient starts bearing weight, the
Yeah.
Yes,
quality
that's
immaculate.
weight bearing is the best
Absolutely,
technical attack.
Yes.
I think we get this clue from fracture neck of the femur. When you fix the fracture neck of the femur with good compression, patient
Yes.
starts lifting the limb, straight leg rising, movement and everything, no pain. You take it for granted that your fracture is going to unite. But if he has got some pain turning this side and that side and sitting, and then I think one should be careful of the fixes and fracture neck femur. So that clue comes here also.
Okay, sir.
The Elizarov system.
Okay, sir.
Even after the so much of market driven things, these things, Dr. Manish, are not getting that much popularized basically.
That's right, sir.
Tipiratide and all those things, actually, even after that much of market, actually.
Sir.
So
Yes.
and
Yes.
there is no such evidence, good literature, actually, good data is not available. No doubt.
There is no
literature
evidence.
there.
There is no evidence.
That
These are all-
data is not good, actually.
Yeah.
That's the
Sir,
problem.
regarding
There are
ma'am,
some-
ma'am, regarding weight bearing, again, just one something which always foxes me. Suppose we are doing corticotomy and planning to transport it. So,
Yes.
do you start weight bearing after you started distraction, or day one you can start weight bearing? What is your protocol, ma'am?
See, my protocol is to start weight bearing as early as possible. If there is no gap in the bone, if there is gap in the bone, then there is no point in weight bearing, because the weight doesn't pass through the bone, it passes through the fixator. If there is no gap in the bone, if there is lengthening, for example, as you're saying, I insist that patient starts weight bearing as early as possible. But patients never start weight bearing on day 1 or day 2.
Yes.
Usually they take few days. They just go for toe touching, and gradually they go on bearing weight. But we must insist, we must tell the patient that they should start weight bearing as early as possible.
Okay.
There is absolutely no contraindication in starting weight bearing on day 1, but patients usually don't do that.
Okay, ma'am. And sir, one last thing. I'm sorry, I feel like having hijacked the presentation now. But sir, one small comment on Dr. Jishnu's first presentation, sir, which we had for the day. Sir, I had a similar case. Probably I presented in the webinar 4 or 5 weeks back when we had our own series. So we had a similar case, sir, wherein the opposing ends were not conforming with each other. So there was a doubt whether the fracture has united or not, and I did not go for a CT. I simply went ahead. There was an issue of bone grafting, which we were discussing that time. So I really tried bone marrow aspiration and impregnation over there, sir. And it was not the first case where I have done that. And luckily for me, even that in that case also it had worked. Of course, later on I dynamized the fixator only when I saw radiological evidence of consolidation. But one may not, like you had a compromised skin and soft tissue around. So opening it just for bone grafting might end up with some other issues also. And this is a minimally invasive technique, and if you are successful, then it is a win-win situation. So anything which you would like to say about that?
Over the last few months, we have been regularly doing this. I mean, one of my colleagues in the same unit, he insists that in my cases, when I do Elizaro, he insists that let me put some bone graft. I think he's probably doing some series or study on that. And yeah, there was an ankle arthrodesis that was not looking very good. And then he showed me that, see what I did. And then today also in the OT, I was in the OT. So he insisted on a infected post-osteomyelitic fracture that was showing good healing on one cortex. On one cortex there was a defect there. So he also did it today also. So I'll be glad to share his experiences. Bone marrow injection is working in our hands. Around 20 ml. This was a curse, so small kit, so 8 ml, like I said, fresh.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Doctor, my question is actually Dr. Chetan and Dr. Jishnu. Dr. Chetan, you had shown that you did 43 cases of tibial plateau. 43
yes, this was our series.
Okay, yeah. So that's why I asked the question to both of you.
Yeah.
So in your series, what kind of cases you took? It is 4-5 Schatzger or with only soft tissue blisters, soft tissue complications, or just cases?
It was a comparative series, closed tibial plateau fractures with Charney grade 3, and where we adopted both techniques. In one case, the regular traction on bridging fixator followed by plating, dual plating, and then another with primary Elizaro on day 2 or 3.
Your type, you took the type 5-6 or you said 3?
No, it was from 3 to 6.
3, 2, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
Onward, 3 onwards.
Yes.
Okay, with soft tissue complications always, or even without soft tissue complications but having a minimal swelling or like that?
No, that was an exclusion criteria. The minimal soft tissue will always go for plating, dual plating.
Okay.
And only for those compromised soft tissue where there were actually 2 surgeons. One would prefer to do it his way, delay it and plate it, and then another surgeon like me and another one, they would go for primary Elizaro. So we compared these cases.
Okay.
The anatomy, the radiology of the plated cases were much better, but the function of the Elizaro cases were
that's
much better.
That's what I want to ask about the result. Actually.
Yes, the radiology looks very bad in Elizaro.
Have you ever fixed distal femur, rings in distal femur, especially?
Yes.
Yeah.
That decision we take after the fixation of the plateau fracture. If there is associated ligamentous injury that comes up after that step only. After that, we bridge it for a month or couple or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But because those cases where we have bridged the femur, tremendous knee stiffness.
Because nowadays, as the more and more people are doing Elizaro, basically, so this dealing with these tibial plateau fractures with Elizaro, basically there is always a controversial debate between the platers and the Elizaro surgeons.
Yes.
That we would plate it, we would do Elizaro. So there must be some good literature. That
there is literature. I think there is literature available.
Yeah, ma'am. Nowadays we are really having good literature supporting the Elizaro fixation for these tibial plateau fractures.
The results are almost the same. Like
that's why I've asked to Dr.
The results are almost the same. The complication rate is drastically less in Elizaro. And as somebody pointed out that the early mobility can give very good result in the long term. So some of those cases have been followed up for many years now. Even with that bad radiology, they are not actually complaining of post-traumatic arthritis. So that's a very surprising finding. Maybe Hemjit will go for arthroscopy in those cases and tell us more.
Actually, a few weeks back, I was also searching about the long-term data on the arthritis, actually post-traumatic arthritis on these cases. Is there any comparative study between the plating and the Elizaro?
Yes, long-term data is not available. The only complication is less in Elizaro. Short-term data, 1 year or 2 years. But if we get the long-term data, I think we should pull our data to understand it more.
Comparatively forgiving joint. I mean, especially the tibial condyles.
That's
If it doesn't look good, if you see long-term, like I've seen my patients of 5 years, 7 years post Elizaro. they're still doing very well.
Definitely that I want to ask actually, just for the.
Because it's forgiving. The joint is quite forgiving.
Very forgiving.
Definitely. No, functionally they really do well. Functionally they really do well.
Ma'am, the
So-
early weight bearing mobilization, it just allows good movement of synovial fluid inside the joint. These are all very important factors for the overall functional outcome.
How early do you allow weight bearing? Actually, I don't allow very early weight bearing in these.
No,
fractures.
Not tibial
Yeah.
fractures.
No,
Not
not for
tibial
tibial
fracture.
fractures.
Only range of motion is allowed.
Only
Only
range of motion
motion.
exercises.
Early weight bearing is not the advantage here.
No,
Ma'am,
no.
I have been to contrary to what we are discussing. I have been allowing weight bearing immediately, as and when the patient is comfortable. Of course,
Yes,
with
that
the
is
help of
nice.
crutches, he
Actually,
starts proprioception part with the help of toe touching. Over a period of time, in about 2 to 3 weeks, he is able to, put some weight. Not that he's walking 100%
Actually,
weight bearing.
Dr.
That is
Manish,
obviously.
Dr. Manish,
It's
what
not,
you are
not
saying
a
actually-
question of patient's comfort, you know.
Yes.
But
Actually,
but
what
I-
Dr. Manish, what you are saying, because there are no, it's not the case that we are having 1 or 2 fragments only, and
Sir.
we have fixed with the Ilizarov wires. There are
Sir.
other fragments also which we
usually
have
there is
not fixed,
combination. Yes.
which we have not fixed in severe combinations and all like that.
Sir,
So
but that
if we are
is-
allowing
that
the
is-
early weight bearing, we are allowing the joint to come.
So that's exactly what my point is, sir. When we are applying the most proximal ring and maybe a ring down below, we should not just think about minimum keyhole incision and minimum incision. That we have to differentiate between what our basic job is. We should try to get as better an alignment, and as far as the intra-articular stability is concerned, sir, we have to fix it very rigidly.
It's really right, but the problem is with so many of fragments, and
Yeah.
especially with the posterior column fragments,
Yes.
it's very hard to fix them basically.
So, sir, you can always make it a hybrid fixator by adding a few screws or something like that. I am not saying
But
that.
then, even then weight bearing cannot be
Okay.
Allowed even on screws now.
yeah.
I'll
Dr. Kabra and Dr. Vishnu, you can tell us, when do you allow weight bearing?
Not before 2 months.
Yeah, like
exactly.
Oh,
Even
that's-
I wait for 6 weeks minimum.
then, ma'am, it gives me a reason
Wait,
to.
weeks.
Then it gives me a reason to do a study on it, because I have been really going aggressive, and it is backed by my
Hey,
own personal
Dr. Manish,
experience.
you are right, but what I am saying is, if you have 2 fragments and your
Yes.
wires are in that 2 fragments, you
Mhm.
will not have any complication. But if you are having a 4 or 5 fragments and all the fragments were not taken into consideration while wiring, then definitely you will have complications in early weight bearing. And it's better to go for CT scan just to see what the
Yes, yes.
tibial plateau profile is actually.
Absolutely.
How many
sir.
fragments and where are they actually located?
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, I think we should.
So we had a long discussion and
Yes.
Yeah,
good
we had very
discussion.
good
Very nice.
discussion. Very good discussion.
And,
Thank you very much, Dr. Barua, and everybody, all the faculty members. Thanks a lot.